Masechet Yevamot, Daf Saditet. We saw Mishnah that talked about 5 sons who were all switched at birth, and now we're going to quote a Baraita that cites a few curious cases, also of children that were switched at birth. It leads to interesting outcomes regarding Yibum. So here we go, Tenura Banan. Yesh choles le'imo misafek, la'achoto misafek, lebito misafek. You can construct such a case where someone would need to do chalitza to his own mother, be out of safek, or sister, or own daughter. Normally, if any out of a close relation, family relation, falls to a yavam, so there's no need to do yibum or chalitza at all. The entire law doesn't apply, and she can simply, these yevamot can simply go free and marry anyone they want. But because these cases are doubtful, where it could be it is his mother or not, because people switched at birth. So let's see the first case. Kesad. Imo ve'isha acheret, ve'lahen shene zecharim. You have 2 women, one is this guy's mother and one is not related. They both have sons, but they're switched. Ve'chazru ve'yadu shene zecharim be'macha be'no. They have sons and they know who those sons are. But then they have a second son in hiding, meaning in a situation where there's no one around to identify and they got switched. Uba bena shel zo v'nasa imo shel ze, ubna shel zo nasa imo shel ze. The older one, who we know who they are, they each marry the mother of the other one, which is fine. They're not related at all. Assuming the mothers were divorced or their previous husbands had died. Umetu belo banim, and those husbands died without children. Ze choles lishtehen veze choles lishtehen. So the brothers who may have been switched have to do chalitza. Nimsa kol echad ve'echad choles limo misafek. So they're giving chalitza to both women, while one of them is his mother. But yet they have to do both because we don't know which is which. Here's a little diagram where you have Rachel, Yaakov and Rachel had a son, Yosef, and Reuven and Hannah had a son, Chetzron. Okay, and we know who they are. That's good. But then they also, Rachel also has a son, Aleph, and Hannah has a son, Bet, but these may have been switched. We're not sure. So Yosef and Yaakov and Reuven are divorced or they die. So leaving Rachel and Hannah single. Well, Yosef marries Hannah, Chetzron marries Rachel. That's fine. These are 2 totally unrelated families. Well, now they're related because they married into each other. And so that's fine. But these 2 guys died without kids. And so now the brother needs to do yibum. So the brother here, Yosef's paternal brother, is this guy Aleph, and Chetzron's paternal brother is Bet. So technically, if they were not switched, it would be totally fine. He would need to do yibum for his brother, and therefore marry Hannah. And he's not related to Hannah, so that would be totally fine. And the other way around too. But if they were switched at birth, then this Bet is actually the son of Hannah. And so just in case that's true, they cannot do Yibum. They both do Chalitza, and the Chalitza, one of them will be to one or both will be to their 0 or both will be to their own mothers. Okay, that's the first case. Now, la'achoto misafek kesad. How can you have a case of chalitza with a sister? Imo ve'isha acheret she'yaldu shetei nekevot b'machabe. Mother and some other woman both gave birth to girls in hiding, and now in this case it's the girls that got mixed up. And their brothers from not from that mother married these 2 sisters, so that was allowed because it's the other way around. Umetu belo banim choles lishtehem nimsa choles lachoto misafek, and they died. Those husbands died without children, and so the surviving brothers would have to do chalitza because they don't know which sister is whose. Here is a chart. This chart is actually not of exactly of our text of the Talmud, but rather one that Rashi cites and is in the Tosefta. So it's a slightly different construction, but the same idea of giving of chalitza with sister. Here you have Yaakov, who had three sons, two of them, Reuven and Shimon, with another woman, not pictured here, and then with Rachel had a son, Levi. So these are all paternal brothers. Now Rachel, Yaakov dies, is out of the picture or divorced. Rachel remarries Moshe and has a daughter here, Aleph. Moshe then also has another wife and has a daughter, Bet. The problem is that these two sisters were switched at birth. Okay, now Reuven marries Aleph and Shimon marries Bet. That's totally fine also because Shimon is not actually related. It's true that it was their father's wife's daughter, but that's not directly related, so they can do that. They die without children and leaving Levi to be the Yavam, to do Yibum with, both of these, Reuven and Shimon. So the problem is that one of them is his maternal sister. One of them is not related. So if they were not switched at birth, then he could do Yibum with Bet. There would be no Yibum, no Chalitza needed for Aleph, that's his sister. Thing is, we don't know which is which, so therefore he can't do Yibum with either, and one of them needs Chalitza, we don't know which one, so he will end up giving Chalitza to his own sister. And so there you go. That is case number 2. And now we get to the third case. Lebito misafek kesad ishto v'isha acheret she'yaldu shete nekevot b'machabe uba'u achehen unsa'um umetu belo banim ze choles lebito misafek v'ze choles lebito misafek. You can have a case of someone giving chalitza to his own daughter if his wife and some other woman both had girls, but those girls got mixed up. The brothers of this guy, or either one of them, came and married, the two brothers from another mother, married those two kids, and they died without children, so the surviving brother would have to do chalitza to both women, one of them being his daughter, the other one not related. Here's a diagram. So you have these Reuven, Yitzchak, Yaakov. These three are brothers, and he is married to Leah. He has a daughter. The thing is, the daughter gets mixed up with some other girl who's also a daughter of someone, and they get mixed up. Now Yitzchak and Yaakov and Yitzchak go ahead and marry both of them. Yaakov marries one, Yitzchak marries the other. The one that's not related is totally fine. The other one is his brother's daughter, which is also totally fine. They can even be full siblings. So that's his niece. That's permitted as well. Now they both die. So in a classic case of niece situation, Reuven would not do Yibum and no need to do Chalitza with his own daughter, so she could just go free. Thing is, they got mixed up at birth, so she may very well be someone else, not related to him. So he has to do chalitza to both because one of them needs to go free, and he can't do yibum to either because one of them might be his daughter. So there you go. He does chalitza to his own daughter, misafek. We're now going to cite two more fascinating cases. These have nothing to do with Yibum and nothing to do with mixed up children. But since we're talking about fun construction of scenarios, so here's a couple more. Tanya. Haya Rabbi Meir Omer, Ish v'isha pamim shemolidin hamesh umot. It is possible for the same man and wife to give birth to 5 sons that are of completely different status in terms of their lineage. How could that happen? Kesad. A Jew buys a non-Jewish slave and slave woman from the marketplace. And they already have 2 children. So they are all not Jewish. One of those sons converts. So now you have a non-Jew and a Jew. That's already 2 categories. That father and mother, if the owner then has them go into the mikveh to become officially Eved Kanaani and Shifcha Kanaanit, and then they are mate, then their child, that'll be their third child, will be a slave. So now that's three different classes of people. Now, if the owner frees the slave woman, and so now she becomes Jewish. So a Jew with an Aved, they have a child. That fourth child is a mamzer. This is not agreed upon by everyone. In fact, it's not the majority opinion, but there is an opinion that a Jew and a slave who have a child together produce a mamzer, and we're following that opinion here. And then if he frees both of the father and the mother, he frees the father also, and they get married and they have a child, so now you have a full Jew as their child. So there you go, all five possibilities, and here's a chart of this that goes through each of them, but we already did so. That's an interesting case. Now we say, "Mai kamash malan." What's the point of this? What is it teaching us? It's it's an interesting case, but you're just applying the rules that we all know. That might teach. What is it teaching us new? It's teaching us that if a non-Jew or a slave who have a child with a Jewish woman, the child will be a mamzer according to this opinion. Okay, in fact, it could be that this was another kind of brain teaser, but it's nice if the brain teaser also teaches us a new halacha. Okay, banan, and yet one more interesting scenario. Yesh mocheret aviv lehagbot imo ketuvata. It could be a possibility that a son would have to sell his father in order to pay his mother's ketuvah. How so? Kesad. Yisrael lakach eved v'shivcha min hashuk v'lahem ben. A Jew buys a man and woman slaves from the marketplace, and they have a child. They already had a child, or they have a child. And then this Jewish owner frees the maidservant, and she becomes Jewish, and he marries her, which is totally permitted. And he decides to give away all of his property to her son, her biological son. Good. Now, of course, when they get married, he owes her a ketuvah. So, what if this Jewish owner and now his wife, who used to be a shivcha, if he dies or they get divorced, now the ketuvah has to be paid. Well, where's all the money? The money is with the biological son of the wife. So nimsa zeh mocheret aviv lagbot leimo ketuvata. Now, among the property that the Jew had was he bought the man who is the father of this child. So now that he gives all of his property to the child who is the son of his wife. So the son owns his biological father, and now he has to pay the ketuvah for his mother, and in order to raise money to pay the ketuvah, he may have to sell his own father on the slave market to pay his mother's ketuvah, and there you go. A very interesting case. My kamash malan, and here again, what do we ask? What is this teaching us? What new halacha, even though also it could be constructed as a thought experiment, as a puzzle. But here, kula de bimeirhi ve'abda mitaltele mataltele mishtabedele ketubah. Well, we could interpret it two ways. One is that this entire case is according to the Bimeir, and Bimeir thinks that slaves are considered movable objects, and movable objects do become collateral to pay the ketuvah. Both of these are points of contention. Some people say that a slave is like land. And also some people say that movable objects do not become collateral mortgage to a loan, only land does. But if you think that even movable objects can become collateral, and slave is a movable object, then the slave would be required to sell in order to pay the ketuvah. I mean, if there's enough funds, he could sell other things. But let's say there's insufficient funds, so he would have to sell his father, who is also his property, in order to pay the ketuvah. That's one possibility. Or it could follow not to be me'ir, the other opinion that says slaves are like land, and land does become collateral. There's a lien on the land to pay the loan, to pay the ketuvah, and therefore he would have to sell not only land but also slaves in order to pay the ketuvah. Either way, that would be an outcome of this interesting case. Good, and now we get to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah continues with cases of mixed up babies at birth. Ha'isha shenitarev velada bivlad kalata. You have a woman and her daughter-in-law both gave birth at the same time, which is possible. It happens sometimes even now. And their two sons get mixed up at birth. Higdilu ataruvot venasu nashim. These two sons who may have been mixed up, they marry women, umetu, and they die. Bnei hakala chosin velo miyabemin. The other sons of the daughter-in-law have to do chalitza and not yibum, because they are shehu safek eshet achiv, safek eshet achi aviv, because we're not sure if the yevamah to that one of those brothers is the sister-in-law, which would be fine, that's yibum, or it could be the wife of her father's brother, that's his aunt, and that would be not allowed. So he has to do chalitza. However, bnei hazekena, the son, the other sons of the older woman, of the original mother, o chosin o meyabemin, they can do chalitza or even yibum, because either way, it's either that the yevamah is either safek eshet achiv, either it's his wife's, his brother's wife, and that's good, that's a case of yibum, or it could be eshet ben achiv, or it could be his nephew's wife, which is permitted to him, and so that way is okay. Here is a quick diagram. You have Yitzchak and Hannah, the original parents, who give birth to two sons, a third later. First of all, two sons. One of the sons marries, so this is the daughter-in-law. And they have a child, Menashe, who was for sure. So here you have Gad and you have Menashe. Those are the ones that we know. This is the son of the elder, and this is the son of the daughter-in-law. Good. So no one got mixed up yet. But then each of these couples has another son, right? The parents has one, Aleph, and the son with the daughter-in-law has another, Bet. And these may have been mixed up. When these two marry someone else and they die without children, so now the brothers have to do Yibum. If they were not mixed up, then everything would be fine. Gad and Aleph are brothers, so this is his brother's wife. Good, do Yibum. And the same thing here, Menashe and Bet are brothers. He does Yibum for her. So all that is just fine. But what if they did get mixed up? Well, then, if Gad was taking the wife of this one, if in fact they were mixed up, so what would that be to him? That would be his brother's son's wife. His brother's son's wife. That's his nephew's wife. That's permitted. So either way, he can do Yibum or Chalitza. But the other way around is not good. For Menashe, this would be his father's brother's wife. That's his aunt. And there's no Yibum for aunt. And so he has to do Chalitza to both. So that is the first case of the Mishnah. Now, same case, but metu akesherim. Instead of the ones that got mixed up dying, the brothers who we know for sure who they are end up dying. The Gemara is going to say that kisherim here is not to imply that the other kids are pisulim or unfit. It just means that they're the vadaim, that we know who they are. What if they die? Then, Hataruvot, those two sons who may have been mixed up, they would have to libnei hazikena, for the sons of the elder woman who died without kids, if there was more than one, they would have to both the taruvot would have to do chotzin v'lo miyabemin, chalitza na ibum. Why? Because shehu safek eshet achiv ve'eshet achi aviv. Because the Yevamah, too, one of the Tarovot, are either perhaps his brother's wife, in which case he would need to do something, so she can't just go free, but it's a possibility that it is his aunt, in which case he cannot do Yibum. So we can see this on the next chart, same as this chart, except these people are living and these two have died. So here we go, as follows. For her Chava, the son of the Zekena, the daughter-in-law of the Zekena here, and he died without children. So for her, they would both have to do chalitza to her, because yes, on the one hand, it could be that it's the brother. This is his brother's wife, and so yeah, you could do yibum. So she needs something, but it could also be his father's. Here's his father is Asher, brothers. This is his father's brother's wife, and that would be his aunt, and that would be prohibited. So both of them have to do chalitza to her. However, for this one, either of them can do yibum, because if it turns out to be that this one does yibum, then that's his brother's wife. So that's good yibum. And if not, even if it's this one, that would be his brother's son's wife, which is just his nephew's wife, and that wouldn't be yibum, would still be permitted. So one does they pick whichever one they choose. One does yibum and one does chalitza, and that's the rest of it here. She libnei hakala, for the sons of the on behalf of the sons of the daughter-in-law who died, echad choles ve'echad me'abem, one of the ones that was switched does chalitza and one does yibum. And last case of the Mishnah of switching, that has many consequences here. Kohenet shenit arev velada bivlad shivchata. You have a Kohen who's married to a woman, so she's called Kohenet, and they have a son, so the son is a Kohen. And they also own a slave who has a son. And the slave, so now the son of the Kohen and the son of the slave woman get mixed up. So that means one of these boys is a Kohen, and one of them is an Aved. Hare elu ochlim b'teruma. Both of them can nevertheless eat teruma. The one that's a Kohen, he could eat teruma. The one that is an Aved, but he belongs to the household of a Kohen. So anyone in the household can also eat teruma. So that's fine. V'cholkin chelek echad bagoren, and they can go collect one share of teruma in the granary. We're going to see that the Gemara will discuss this further, that one person, they can't get two shares because the servant doesn't deserve his own share. Only a Kohen deserves his own share. The Kohen can just eat from the share of the Kohen. So together, they can share one portion. Ve'enan metamein lametim, neither of them can become tameh lamet, because one is a Kohen, one's not. So safek, so just in case you're the Kohen, you can't become tameh lamet. Ve'enan nosim nashim ben kesherot ben pesulot. The problem is they can't marry anybody. They can't marry fit people because maybe you're the Eved, and you can't marry unfit people because maybe you are the Kohen. That's a problem. Higdilu ataruvot v'shichreru ze et ze. If these two kids now grow up, and let's assume that the father died, and so now the son that is the Kohen inherits the property, including the other kid who is an Avid. So now one owns the other, but they don't know which one is which. So they both free each other. They give each other a document of emancipation. So once he's emancipated, now he's a Jew. So you have one guy who's a Kohen and one guy who's now a regular kosher Jew, not a Kohen. So in this case, now the consequences are different. Now they can marry a Jew, but only someone who a Kohen can marry. So neither of them can marry a divorcee because either of them might be the Kohen. But they can marry a non-divorcee regular Jew that a Kohen could marry. Nevertheless, they can still continue the same law that they cannot become tameh for a met if it's not a close relative. But they will not get lashes if they do so. A regular Kohen who does become tameh on purpose, the court gives them lashes. But this over here, the court cannot prove that either one deserves lashes because the court cannot prove that either one's a Kohen. And so you can't give a punishment without definite proof. Ve'enan betruma. Neither of them now can eat teruma. Beforehand, one was a kohen, one was an eved, so he belonged to the kohen in the kohen's family, so that's fine. But now, neither one, because one's a Yisrael and is not allowed to eat the teruma, so neither can. V'machlu enan mishalimim ken v'chomesh. But if one of them did eat teruma, they don't have to pay the fine of the extra 25%, because one has to prove that they deserve to pay to pay the fine, and so let the court prove that you're a non-kohen, and since they can't prove it, no fine. Ve'enan cholkin al hagod, and if they go to collect food teruma from the granary, they will not get it, because each one say, prove that you're the kohen, and you don't want to give it to the non-kohen. If you say, let's say both show up and say, okay, give us both one portion altogether, because one of us is a kohen. Also, they cannot collect it because we don't want to open the possibility that the non-kohen will eat the teruma. So neither of them are going to get it. If they have, let's say they have their own grain and they separate, they still have to separate teruma. So if they separate teruma, on the one hand, they don't have to give it to a kohen for free, because let a kohen come and prove that I am a Yisrael. Since they can't prove it, I don't have to actually give it to them. On the other hand, neither of the brothers can actually eat it because they might be Yisrael. So therefore, they can sell it to a kohen and keep the money. Why can they keep the money? Because let the kohen prove that I am not a kohen, and then I'll give him the money. But since he can't prove it, so the monetary value of the teruma, either brother is allowed to keep, but neither of them can actually eat the teruma. There's a difference between the kedusha and the money. Similarly here, ve'enan cholkin bekodshe hamikdash. Any holy items in the Bet HaMikdash that are usually shared by Kohanim, they do not get. This would include portions of sacrificial meat. They can't even eat teruma, for sure they cannot eat that. They also would not get the hides. The hides of olot would normally go to the Kohen. The Kohens would split it. They're worth money. So they don't get a portion of that either. Ben notnim lahem kodashim. Also other gifts that usually people will give to the Kohen, like a bechor animal. Neither of these two guys who were switched can get them, because you never know which one is in fact a kohen. Ben mosin shelahem midehem. If either of these individuals happens to get his hands on, let's say, one of these hides, then he can keep it, and you cannot take it away from him, because hamotzi mechavero alav hareaya. Let the other kohen prove that this guy is not a kohen, and then he can come and take it. Otherwise, it's just the monetary value. So this guy can keep that monetary value. There's no kedusha to something like the animal hides. In general, whenever someone does shechita on an animal, even just to eat it, not a korban, one has to give these different sections, the foreleg, jaw, the moah, the part of the stomach, has to give it to the kohen. So this is not kodesh, they're not holy foods, it's just the monetary value. And therefore this guy, since he's either a kohen, in that case he could keep it, or he's a Yisrael, he's a convert, he wasn't eved and freed, in which case he would have to give it to the kohen, since it's doubtful either way, and no one can prove that he's not a kohen. So therefore he can keep these and let a kohen come and prove that this guy is not a kohen, and then take it from him. But since someone can prove it, he's allowed to keep the monetary value. What if either one of these two guys who were mixed up has a bechor animal? Usually a bechor animal you have to give to the kohen, and the kohen would have to make it a sacrifice if it was unblemished, and the kohen, if it is blemished, then the kohen can take it and use it and enjoy its monetary value. In this case, this guy cannot sacrifice the animal because he's not a kohen. he might be Israel. But also, he does not have to give it to a Kohen because he might be a Kohen, and no one can prove otherwise. So therefore, we do something in the middle. He keeps it, but he cannot sacrifice it. Instead, he lets it graze until it becomes unfit, until it gets a blemish. And at that point, it does not have to be sacrificed anymore, and he can simply use it for himself, because all that's left is the monetary value, and again, you cannot take it from his hands because no one can prove that he's not a kohen. And then a general statement: "V'notnin alav chomrei kohanim v'chomrei Yisraelim." He gets all of the stringencies of being both a kohen and a Yisrael. All right, that is the Mishnah. Gemara is going to give a few short comments on some of these sections. It says metu hakisherim. In the case above, said, what if the two brothers that were known should die? Now we say, Ela hanach bishum de'aruv la havu lehu pisulin. Why are you calling the brothers who we know who their mother is for certain? You're calling them kesherim, and the ones who were mixed up at birth, what, are they unfit just because they were mixed up? That doesn't make them unfit in any way for marriage or other things. So Amar Papa Ema umetu havadain. Papa explains, says, you're right. You can say the ones who were for sure, we know who their parents are. They're the ones that died. So kisherim here means vadain. All right, so that explains that language. Libnei kala ehad holetz. Davka michalatz v'hadad yabumeh. So for in that case above, the children of the kala, so for the daughter-in-laws of the kala, who would be Yevamot, you have to do chalitza first. One of the ones who is not known does chalitza, and the other one does yibum, right? Because at worst it would be his nephew, or it could be a sister-in-law, in which case it would be yibum. So the Gemara is pointing out that you have to make sure to do chalitza first and only then yibum. Aval yibum bereshala de kapaga bibama lashuk. But if you do yibum first, then who knows? It might be the wrong one. It might be the one who is the uncle. So yeah, he's allowed to marry the niece, but not before the other one does chalitza, because the other one is in fact the brother-in-law, is the avam. And so if the uncle should do yibum first, he is marrying a yevama who still has a zikah to the yavam. She's not allowed to marry anyone else yet. But once that guy does chalitza, then the other one can do yibum. So whoever's going to do whichever has to do chalitza first and then yibum. All right, now this last case, kohenet shenitarev v'chole chelek ehad peshita. It says that they go to the granary. Let's say they go together, right? The one that's the child that's a kohen, and the child who is an Ived. We don't know which is which. They both go to the granary. They only get one portion. Well, isn't that obvious? They only get one portion. In what scenario would they possibly get two portions? Each Kohen gets one portion. One of them is not a Kohen. So rather it means Ema Halek Ke'ehad. They get a portion as one, meaning they have to both show up in order to receive one portion. Why they both need to be there? As follows: Tenan kemanda amad en cholkin teruma la'aved ela imken rabo imo. Must be that our Mishnah follows the opinion of a machloket that we're about to see, that we do that at the granary. They do not distribute teruma to a slave unless the master is with him. So they're only going to give it to the master. You could bring a slave along to help him carry it, but they do not give it to the slave. And therefore, one of these two people is a slave. So if anyone shows up by himself, we can't give it to him. If they're both there, then we know that one of them is a Kohen. So, and only in that case will they dispense one portion for the two. The Tanya, what is this machloket about? It says, En cholkin teruma la'aved Elam ken rabo imo, dibre Rabbi Yehuda. Braita says we do not give teruma to a slave unless the master is with him, and that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. That's what we just quoted. That's our Mishnah, is the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Machmir. Rabbi Yosef Omer, Yachol she'omar, im kohen ani, tenu li b'shbil atzmi. Im ebed kohen ani, tenu li b'shbil Rabbi. It's fine either way. He can say, listen, if I'm the kohen, Rabbi Yosef doesn't require the kohen to be there. An eved in general can come and say, I'd like to receive it on behalf of my master. That's totally fine. And so here, either one of these two kids can come and say, listen, if I'm the one that's the kohen, please give it to me for myself. I want it. And if I am the servant, then please give it to me for my master. And either way, it will be able to take it. And so the Biyoseh would disagree with our Mishnah and say either one can go and receive the portion, although they're still only going to get one portion between the two of them. All right, now this has very important consequences, this machloket. Bimkomo shel Rabbi Yehuda hayu ma'alin mitiruma liyochasin. Bimkomo shel Rabbi Yoseh lo hayu ma'alin mitiruma liyochasin. In the town of Rabbi Yehuda, they would assume someone's lineage. They would establish someone's lineage based on whether they get teruma at the granary. In other words, if someone comes along and says, "Oh, we're not sure, is this person a kohen or not a kohen? Is he a fit kohen or not?" Well, let's see. Is he on the list at the granary? Right? He goes to the granary. So he's on the list. He received his grandfather received teruma at the granary. That by itself, just the fact that he is on the list to receive teruma at the granary, means he is a proper kohen. That's why Rabbi Yehuda will not allow dispensing of teruma to an eved. An eved can't say, well, I'm representing him. No good, because if he represents him, then people will say, oh, I saw him get food at the granary one time, last year. And based on that, we would say, oh, he's a valid kohen. But if you allow the eved to come and do it, then you'd have a problem, because eved is not a valid kohen. So therefore, in the place of the Yehuda, they'd have to be very strict. Because they made a one-to-one relationship. Proper kohen can receive them from the granary, otherwise no. In the place of Rabbi Yosef, they did not establish someone's lineage based on the granary. Right? The granary, lots of people can come to the granary. Anyone who's related in the household, all that. So therefore, he could be lenient and allow anyone to take the portion on behalf of the kohen. That's just fine, because we are not using it as a proof. All right, that's very interesting. And now we have a story about this. Tanya Marabi Elazar Bar Sadok. In my entire life, I only testified once in a court. And that one time, they came out a mistake. And they established that a slave is a kohen based on my testimony. That's false testimony. What he did is he gave true testimony. He said, I saw this person receive a portion of grain at the granary. That's what he said. And based on that, the court said, oh, he received grain, so he was a place of Rabbi Yehuda. If he received grain, he must be a proper kohen. Turns out he was actually a slave. And so a mistake happened because as a consequence of his testimony. Now, how could this come about? Even the animals of righteous people, Hashem does not allow any error to come because of them. A good example is the donkey of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, who would refuse to eat tebel. Only if you took maaser, he would eat it, because he was Pinchas ben Yair was so righteous. Even his donkey was righteous. So if Hashem does not allow mistakes to come forth from even the animals of righteous, and also, all the more so, the righteous people themselves, so how could this happen that a righteous sage his testimony would result in an error like this? Rather, what he must have meant is that they almost established that a slave is a kohen based on my words, but they cleared it up, and we recognized our mistake.
Now, how did the mistake happen? Chazal be'atreh de Rabbi Yosef, v'azal v'ashed be'atreh de Rabbi Yehuda. His testimony was true, but the contexts were different. He saw the dispensing of the terumah to the slave in the place of Rabbi Yosef, where they weren't careful with this, and they dispensed to anyone, and it wasn't as significant who they dispensed it to in the place of Rabbi Yosef. That could not be used as testimony. But then he testified in a court in the Rabbi Yehuda's locale, and there that testimony does work. And they didn't realize at first that he only saw this happen in the place of Rabbi Yosef. So it was a miscommunication based on different contexts, and they found out the error, and so no stumbling block, no error came from this. But you see how important this was, that at dispensing at the granary, they had to be really, really careful to make sure that this person was really a Kohen. Okay, all this has a tremendous amount of practical application nowadays, where we assume people are Kohanim just based on their last name, based on they say father's a Kohen, but it's very difficult for anyone to prove that they are a Kohen. There is a Kohen gene, but I don't know if we could use that for halachic purposes, or if it's really 100%. And so there are cases where we're not sure if someone's a Kohen, or we can raise doubts about it. And so this discussion of Safek Kohen and the implications have a tremendous amount of practical value. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.